Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and welcome to your weekly forecast for the week of October 7th through October the 13th. This week we have a opposition between Mercury and Uranus, which should be electric. We've got a square between the Sun and Saturn. A couple planets, at least one planet, is changing signs. We had a couple that changed signs last week. But Venus is going to be ingressing or changing signs into the sign of Scorpio. Got a Venus opposition to Uranus, so kind of a spicy Uranian flavored week. Also a full moon at the end of the week, so we're going to be experiencing mostly the gibbous moon on the way leading up to the full moon, and then kind of the peak moon energy at the end of the week that is going to be part of a cardinal T-square. So that's kind of the overview of the week. Just a couple things personally before we get started. I'm going to be making an appearance at the Enlightened Soul Expo, which is going to be in Southfield on the weekend of the 12th and the 13th, which is next weekend, doing readings and things like that. So if you're interested in that and you're in the local Michigan area, check out the link below in the video, and there'll be more information about how you can either set up a reading with me or come. It's going to be a pretty cool event. It's going to be a lot of different metaphysical folks, tarot readers, psychic mediums, astrologers, people who are vendors doing like selling things like crystals and things like that. So if you're into the kind of new agey metaphysical community, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff there. So check that out. Okay. Plug over. All right. Hope you're doing okay this week and that you survived all of our Pluto unclogging. I thought it was funny. Last week I described the Pluto going direct as getting your plunger out and unclogging the nasty sinks and toilets of our life. And I literally had to get my plunger out and unclog the toilet last week. It was a very literal manifestation of that energy. So I couldn't help but chuckle to myself a little bit. Hades or Pluto is having a little joke with me on that. Yeah, so let's just dive right into it here. This week it's maybe a little bit less of a Platonic week. It's more of a Uranian flavored week. But we're going to be really, the moon is really gathering strength this week and kind of waxing and coming into its fullness. So a lot of activity this week, I would say. We got the impulse last week and we were trying to mobilize our resources to start to move forward with whatever divine assignment we were given at the new moon. And now we're going to kind of see the fruition of that and the ability to kind of manifest it into form, and then get some feedback about it at that full moon. A lot of times at full moons, whatever we've started, we start to get kind of a little bit of feedback or a progress report based on how it relates to the other people in our life. And with this full moon happening over the axis of Libra and Aries, it's going to be even more focused on our individual desires and willpower and the things that we're trying to achieve and how it fits into the other people in our life and the relationships in our life. So that's something that we're going to be seeing as a theme coming in. And with a square to Pluto on this full moon, we're going to, have a, we're going to see how it fits into the grander scheme too, and into the structures of our life and whatever is brewing underneath the surface or into the underworlds of our lives. And hopefully we've kind of come to some realizations that'll lead us to making some positive changes and transformations and getting us unstuck. So hopefully you've been taking some positive steps in that direction. Okay, essential dignities for the week. We still have the sun in Libra, which is its fall or depression. The sun does not have is not super happy in that sign of Libra. It's very difficult for the sun to do solar things because it's basing a lot of the identity in the other, and instead of being able to command authority, which is what some of the solar significations are, is taking leadership roles and making commandments, commanding action. We're always having to kind of check in and maybe weigh things in a very Venusian way, which is the host of Libra. So we're more allowing things to come to us, which is not necessarily very comfortable for the sun, because it's not really conducive to its essential nature. So that's one of the things that we see with the sun in Libra. It is a good time to kind of check in with the other people in your life, to bring balance, to really weigh some of your achievements over the year and see what needs to stay and what needs to go as you prepare for judgment. I mean, there's kind of like this Libra sun was associated with the weighing of the heart against the feather as we entered into the underworld, when we were crossing the river Styx or going into a different phase of existence. So one thing to keep an eye on. Jupiter is in Sagittarius again this week, which is its own home domicile or temple. It also has triplicity rulership by nighttime, which gives it extra boost of luck or communal support, or the wind in its sails, so to speak. Jupiter is going to be moving into the third decan of Sagittarius this week, which is represented by the 10 of Wands in our little tarot exploration. And you can see that this figure is carrying quite a burden with the 10 of Wands here. The card was called Oppression in Book T, or the Book of Thoth. And Austin Coppock calls this the horse's skull, where we have a kind of a beast of burden that's ridden to exhaustion. He also compares it to an athlete who's trained to their the muscle exhaustion, right? It's kind of giving every bit of strength that you have to achieve your goal. And this is an area of the zodiac where we're going to be, really, it's time where the rubber meets the road. We have the visionary qualities of Sagittarius and of Jupiter, and now it's like, how do you really get how do you really achieve the goal? What are you willing to sacrifice to achieve the goal? What routines are you willing to put into your life and to commit to? What things are you willing to let go of that may not be conducive to the goal that you want to accomplish? A lot of the times, what's stopping us from achieving a goal is distractions that really aren't serving that goal. And the archer, Sagittarius, it's associated with that arrow, and an arrow needs a goal. An arrow needs a target. An arrow needs a bow to shoot it in the right direction. If you don't have those things, it's just a limp stick. So think about how you can move towards your chosen goal in the next coming weeks. We've got about, I would say we've got a month and a half left of Jupiter in Sagittarius before it moves into its fall in Capricorn. So it's really a good time to just like really put into place the things that are necessary, that are going to support some of these visions and dreams that you've been having over the course of the last few months while Jupiter's been in Sagittarius. Personally, I've been sharing stories of the swimming journey that we've all been going on as a family, in our family, with my teenage daughter, and being a swim parent, which is a big commitment. This past weekend, we went to the first ever International Swimming League meet, which is a swimming league that is kind of like the NBA or the NFL. It's one of the first of its kind, like a professional swimming league where the swimmers are getting paid. And we drove a few hours down to Indianapolis, and it was a really cool experience. There's a lot of Olympians there. I'm sure there was, I think the total was over 50 gold medalists that were, or 50 gold medals won between all the participants. There were Katie Ledecky, Cody Miller, Lily King, Sarah Sorstrom. I don't know if I said her name right, but she's like the most badass Swedish swimmer in the world, and one of the best ever in her event. So some of the really brightest stars of the swimming world. And it was I think that this really fits in with this Jupiter in the third decan of Sagittarius, because it's like when you watch people who are at the very pinnacle of their chosen profession, you realize what really went into that. If you really see them up close and you see like the physicality of it, how they warm up, how they prepare. This is why we went to this. We wanted to see, what do these professionals do before a race? What do these professionals do in between races? What do they do to get themselves prepared and ready? And just being able to witness that, all the little details that go into something like that, it's very instructive. And I think if you're trying to achieve some sort of Jupiterian goal in your own life, it's important to really pay attention to all the little things that you need to get prepared. It's a mindset. And in addition to a mindset and a visionary goal, you need to be able to be willing to make the little adjustments that will lead to success. And I think that the greatest thing that I've learned from, trying to assist in this journey, first of all, just having some patience is number one. That's not my strongest suit, but patience is important, but also consistency. I think that with this third decan of Sagittarius Jupiter, you're going to have to add in some consistency to whatever you're doing. Really focus on who does what you do really well and take notes and emulate them. There's nothing wrong with that. I think as human beings, we learn most from each other. And I think that can be really inspiring. So I think that's something we're going to be looking at for the last few weeks of Jupiter and Sagittarius season, is making the sacrifices necessary really to achieve that goal. Okay, so Saturn is still in its own home domicile of Capricorn, which is lending us the discipline necessary to achieve some of those Jupiterian goals. Saturn's that quality of being able to do the things that we don't necessarily want to do. I'm not exactly sure on this. Let me see. I want to make sure oh yeah. Okay. So here's a nice tie-in. The third decan of Sagittarius is ruled by Saturn. Every decan has a planetary ruler associated with it. And, one of the things we see about being willing to make sacrifices and do the work necessary is related to that Saturnian decanic ruler. One of the things also mentioned in Austin Cobbock's wonderful book is the concept of ananke, which was also called necessity. So what is necessary to do? Not what we always want to do, but what is the necessary sacrifice to do? And Saturn is all about ananke and necessity. It's all about doing the stuff that you may not want to do, but you have to do. And we're still getting some really good support from Saturn being in Capricorn to doing the tough stuff. And we really have a Saturn that is going to be fairly powerful for the next few years, really, because Saturn's going to be in both its home domicile of Capricorn, its nocturnal temple, and then it moves into its diurnal temple of Aquarius sometime in the next year or so. So we've got a long period of time, which is what Saturn loves, is length of time and being able to be consistent over a long period of time to really kind of get down to business and do the things that need to be done to move ourselves forward to whatever chosen next level that we want to achieve. It can also be a next level, could be learning to let go of something too. Saturn is the concept of time and the concept of entropy. So there might be something where the goal is to dissolve something and to let go of something and to break down a structure rather than build something up. It's all kind of one and the same, the breaking down and the building up. One has to happen for the other to be achieved. So think about that, what stage you are in your Saturnian journey. Venus has a little bit of dignity still, not a little bit, it has a lot of dignity for the beginning of the week here, as it's still in its home domicile of Libra, Libra 3. But it does move very early in the week, Tuesday, into its exile or its adversity in the sign of Scorpio, which is a Mars-ruled temple. So it's kind of like Venus left her own home and is now hanging out in the the house of someone who she does not necessarily have a ton in common with. Yes, they are sect mates. Both Venus and Mars are of the nocturnal sect. So one of the things that they are both really trying to achieve is diversity and change. But they go about it in very different ways. Venus is really using the powers of desire, attraction, and allowing things to come to her, where Mars is very aggressive and goes for what it wants and is very direct. So when Venus is in the sign of Scorpio, she changes her stripes a little bit. She's a little bit less, I think, patient, a little bit less like letting things come to her in like an attraction way. And she kind of has more of a martial desire where she's like, I want this and I'm going to go get it. And that can lead to some sticky situations. That can lead to some problems in our relationships. It can lead to us getting in a little bit of trouble with our desire nature. It can lead to some challenges when we're trying to, can lead to some conflicts in relationships. So Mars may be offering up its significations to Venus to try to harmonize, but it's a little bit of a tough assignment. So that happens on Tuesday. Now the good news is that that Venus is the triplicity ruler of the daytime for the water signs. So it does have a little bit of dignity, does have a little bit of luck or wind in its sails in Scorpio. So there's a little bit of a mitigating factor there. It's a different type of dignity. And we're going to be seeing what is called a mutual reception with Venus and Mars, because Mars is in the sign of Libra, or Venus's temple. So it's kind of like we've got two people that are in each other's homes right now, and they don't necessarily get along super well, or they're kind of like weird house guests, or they're both like not in very great shape, but they have an open line of communication to one another, and they're trying to it seems like they're trying to help one another, that mutual reception. They're exchanging resources. So we may find that we may benefit from some difficult circumstances over the next week with this mutual reception between Venus and Mars. I remember when my teacher was doing a sports horary, which was kind of like asking a question about a match that was happening, I think, with a football game. And these two planets were in mutual reception in their fall. And what happened in the game was, I think this was for a basketball game during the NBA Finals with the Golden State Warriors. One of the teams benefited by the other team getting injured. So I think that Klay Thompson hurt his knee, and the Toronto Raptors were benefiting from an injury. So it was kind of like an unfortunate circumstance that happened, but it ended up benefiting the team that was represented by that. So think about that there may be some things that are challenging and tough in your life, but you may find that there's a silver lining within them, or you may benefit from something that on the surface feels like really an adversarial type of situation, but it may lead to some kind of breakthrough in your life. So that is Venus and Mars exchanging signs, so to speak, or exchanging resources through Scorpio and Libra. Mars and Libra, Mars and Libra is another uncomfortable place, because Mars wants to be, exert its will. It wants to go directly towards what it wants. And in Venus's home, the resources that she's giving it is, the ability to bring harmony and peace and things like that, where Mars wants war. So there's this kind of like very strange kind of, both of these planets are just not in their element, so to speak. So keep an eye on that. Like our forward motion may be, it's like we're asserting ourselves in almost the wrong areas of life, I guess. Where we should be receptive, we're being aggressive. Where we should be, allowing things to come to us, we're like, creating conflicts and things like that. So it's a little bit of a topsy-turvy kind of thing, but it's better than no relationship, I think, between the two of them, because they're at least able to kind of like maybe come to some sort of compromise, I think, by being in mutual reception. All right. Mercury is in Scorpio, which didn't have a ton of dignity last week, but is in its own bound or terms between 11 and 19 degrees of Scorpio. And that happens towards the end of the week, where Mercury starts to be able to set its own terms after kind of not having a lot of ability to do much within Mars's temple of Scorpio. So we'll see a little bit of a better ability to maybe communicate, to like separate things out into categories. Our thinking may get a little bit clearer as we go towards the end of the week. Although the moon, this is a very lunar week too, because we've got the moon waxing into a full moon, where our emotions may be coming to the surface and things may be coming to light or being revealed. So that's something we're going to watch out for. At the beginning of the week, when the moon's in Aquarius, it has dignity by face or by decan between 20 and 30 degrees, the third decan. So there's a little bit of a boost to the moon in the beginning of the week. When the moon moves into Pisces, not a ton of dignity, but it is the moon is the cooperating triplicity ruler. For those of you who pay attention to that particular dignity or ability of a planet. And then the moon is going to be fairly peregrine in the sign of Aries, where it doesn't really have any dignity at all. It's kind of a wandering moon. Moon's not going to be in awesome shape towards the end of the week, especially when it moves under the bond within 15 degrees of the opposition between the sun. And I'll talk about that a little bit as we go along. Okay, so that's your essential dignities report for the week. We're kind of trying to snap through these a little bit, try to keep our videos close to an hour or so. Getting some feedback that it would be nice to have a little bit of a shorter video, and I agree. I think it would be nice to come in with some efficiency. Okay, so Monday the 7th. We are going to be starting out with the moon in Aquarius. Let's share the screen here and see. Let's take a look at our chart. Okay, Monday the 7th. We see that the moon is in Aquarius, and it is still in the first quarter phase that we experienced over the weekend when the moon was in Capricorn squaring the sun in Libra. So we may have had some sort of crisis that we had to deal with, maybe within the world of form, trying to manifest the new vision into form. And we may have had to really make a compromise between our ability to bring harmony in our life and the grander scheme or the grander plan, which is represented by the second decan of Capricorn. Remember that decan was represented by the 3 of Pentacles, where you see 3 figures kind of making a plan to make some very ornate structure. So we're going to be kind of, trying to compromise what sort of things in life do we need to really stick to and say, nope, this is absolutely what we need to do moving forward, and what kind of things do we need to really take someone else's opinion into account, because we don't have to do everything ourselves. Even that second decan of Capricorn really isn't telling us that we have to carry the load completely ourselves. You could see even cooperation within that. But we may be really experiencing over this past weekend here the need to make some adjustments to the plan. I know that personally we've been going through that as a family too, as we see some of these really top level athletes and what they do to get better, and how do we do that as a family as far as like workout routines, and how do we provide opportunities as a parent for success. How do we get our homework done and get enough sleep and have enough social and free time along with that? It's all those things that you balance out when you're trying to achieve a goal. And you may be experiencing that with some sort of goal in your life, is how do you bring balance? How do you have a balanced life when you're trying to achieve something important? Because I think that sometimes we can get a little bit focused only on the goal, and then, we can get a little bit unhappy and unbalanced because we're not really, taking care of ourselves properly with our mental, emotional, and physical health. So it's all about balancing out mind, body, and spirit. And it's very important to check in every once in a while as you go along the journey, because these journeys, if you're trying to achieve something of I don't know, a little bit bigger than your normal everyday goal, even with everyday goals, but something that is more long term, you have to kind of check in every once in a while. You have to make sure that you're still passionate about the goal. You have to make sure that what you're doing is the most efficient and effective way of doing it. And you have to kind of, check in with your spirit and say, okay, am I still healthy? Is this still healthy the way that I'm going about it? And things like that. So always self-reflect, I think, is important. You don't have to self-reflect 24/7, but taking some time for self-reflection can really help you move forward better. And during the first quarter moons, it is a time for a little bit of self-reflection, and maybe making adjustments. So that's going to be Monday. As we move into Monday, we're going to see an opposition happening between Hermes, Mercury in Scorpio, and Uranus in Taurus, retrograde Uranus in Taurus. And the oppositions are of the nature of Saturn. So there's some sort of challenge that happens, some sort of wall or blockage potentially when there's an opposition. And this is going to be one of the first of our Uranian flavored aspects of the week. And that's going to happen very early in the morning on Monday. We may have been feeling the buildup with the weekend with this. Uh, and I like to reference a book. I don't have it with me, but it's called The Archetypal Universe by Ren Butler, a book that I was turned on to by my teacher Adam Ellenboss. Very, very good book with a lot of imagery in it, and it's a really great reference. And he speaks about the freedom of speech, the freedom of press, nervous restlessness, overstimulation, flashes of insight, moments of genius, erratic communication, upsetting communications or revelations. There's trickster energy involved with Mercury, and especially when it meets up with the unpredictability of Promethean Uranus. Um, Also, with Mercury in Scorpio, one of the thoughts that I had about this was if we have some detective work that we're doing, we may be having a flash of insight as it moves up into the opposition with Uranus, that may reveal something that was a little shocking or a little bit like maybe we get the veil was lifted a little bit and we get some sort of insight that we wouldn't normally get that's sort of unusual, and especially in regards to the Taurus and Scorpio axis in our chart. So like in this chart, this might be some sort of, this is a Libra rising chart. This is just the chart of the day, really, the beginning of the day. There may be a revelation between how this person makes their money and how they share resources with somebody else. And there may be something that is having to be communicated with that in a maybe innovative way, or that is, trying to resolve a conflict between that. And this could be true for any area of your life. If it's over the 10th or 4th house axis, this could be the difference between your private life and your public life and trying to figure out how those two things fit together. So keep an eye on that on Monday. That's going to be happening very early in the morning. And as we move through the day, we're going to see a trine from the moon to Mars um, in the air signs of Aquarius and Libra. That's very early in the morning. And then we're going to see at 10:30 a.m. A square from the moon to retrograde Uranus. So maybe we've gotten some sort of information that we need to deal with, and we're again challenged to perhaps shift our perspective with the moon making that square. It potentially could fit in with the groups or the greater society that we're a part of and how we use our resources. If we think of Aquarius as the diurnal Saturn, there's an adjustment, there's a new structure that might need to be put into place, that comes to light where we're trying to get an overview of a situation. Saturn was the furthest planet in the 7 visible celestial sphere model, and hence it gives us the ability to have objectivity. So we may have to really use our objectivity and figure out how to use our resources in an innovative way when we have that square between the moon and Uranus. As we move forward through the day, the moon's going to make a square from the opposite direction to Mercury. So this really, okay, if we think about it like this, then we're seeing a T-square between Mercury, Uranus, and the moon. So we're really going to have to take all these different areas of our life, the Scorpionic area, the Aquarian area, and the Taurus area, into account. So there may be some real tension on Monday where we're trying to create some sort of equilibrium between all these fixed areas of our life. These are all fixed signs, which tend to be a little bit more stubborn. They tend to be a little bit more difficult to create movement within. So if you find yourself at an impasse, it's important to just kind of hover above the moon. I always like to see the moon as, what is the moon asking us to kind of trigger for that day? And the moon is asking for objectivity between those two oppositions. That's really the fulcrum that is moving and kind of moving us from this Mercury to this Uranian type of energy here. So how can you be objective to find the balance point between Mercury and Uranus in those different areas of your life at the beginning of the day? Okay, as we move through to the end of the day, we're going to see a square. Monday is a busy day. Monday is like one of our busiest days. We've got a busy beginning of the week and a busy end of the week. And then the in-between stuff is probably just dealing with the fallout from all this. But you can see here, we're going to have a square between the sun at 14 degrees Libra and Saturn at 14 degrees Capricorn. So what do we make of this? Well, we have one of the lights who is in kind of bad shape in its fall, in its depression. It's not at its strongest. It's at one of its weakest points at the bottom of the Wheel of Fortune, coming up against a friction type of relationship with Saturn, who's very strong. So that could feel like a little bit of an oppressive type of feeling. Our vitality might feel a little bit down. We might not have as much energy. The sun, is life-giving, gives us that vital essence, that vital energy. And when it runs into an adversarial relationship with the Lord of Darkness, Saturn, we may feel this heaviness. There may be a little bit of a depression. We may feel overwhelmed by some of the burdens and things in life that we have to do that we might not want to do. And that could be leading to a little bit of a kind of a dark feeling. One of the images that Ren Butler talks about is Kronos devouring his children. So be careful not to feel like you're being consumed by all the responsibilities that you have in your life. The good news is that the sun is in the superior position. When we talk about traditional astrology, we want to see which planet is earlier in the zodiac when we have a square or a trine or things like that, because that planet sort of has the upper hand. So regardless of Saturn's oppressiveness, Saturn's kind of sending little arrows of depression and responsibility back at the sun. But it's like the sun is chasing Saturn. So it's easier for the sun to see where it's going, where, Saturn is kind of like the criminal that's being chased by the police and it's shooting back at it. But the sun's at somewhat of an advantage, being able to move forward rather than looking backwards. It would be a lot heavier and more oppressive if Saturn was in the superior position. So that's one little piece of good news. The bad news is that the sun is not, doesn't have a ton of dignity. So that inherently gives it a somewhat of a disadvantage. I would say this could be compared to, justice, the police, right, chasing the bad guy. But the bad guy's got a whole bunch of ammunition. His car's pretty fast. And the police car is maybe running out of gas. It's, not really in the strongest of shape, but it's still in pursuit rather than the one that's, being the pursuer. Okay. So think about that as you move forward through the day. You may have a little bit of pessimism that comes in. You may have a run-in with authority. That may be another thing that comes up with the sun representing that kind of masculine quality of commanding authority. And then, Saturn being our limitations, right? It could be sort of a tyrannical father figure that we may be experiencing within our life, with the sun associated with fathers. And, also Saturn in night charts was associated with the father archetype too. Maybe a little bit of coldness or distance. There may be a desire for justice that is coming into conflict with some sort of established structure. We're seeing that in our politics in America right now, where we are having a call for justice with one of the political parties, filing articles of impeachment, and it's coming in contact with the established structure that's in place right now. And who knows what direction that's all going to go. There's all sorts of conflicts that are coming to light with that. And we're just kind of seeing the drama play out over the course of our political landscape. So something like that may be shown to us in our collective conscious as well. The other thing to keep in mind with that is, with this square, Mars is hanging out with the sun and Pluto is hanging out with Saturn. So we may see a Mars flavor to the sun, and also Venus is there too. So there's this Mars-Venus kind of flavor happening with the solar side of the equation, and a Plutonic element with the Saturnian side. So all of the gunk is bubbling up from the underworld. All of the my teacher had a really great analogy. Adam Ellenbos compared it, Pluto to the upside down in Stranger Things. That is a great image, and I want to give him kudos for that. That really shined a light bulb on it for me, where, you know, it looks sort of similar, but it's you know, not, it's non-conducive to life, right? It's the afterlife, it's the underworld, it's death, whereas, you know, the sun is life-giving. So we've got a real conflict between our kind of qualities of death and decay, and you know, things that are sucking the life out of us, and wanting to give life to things. So keep an eye on that in the beginning of the week. All right, as we move forward, okay, as we move forward, let's see. Always have a little problem with this Zoom quality of getting the menu back. There it goes. Okay. There we go. Okay, there's Tuesday. On Tuesday, Moon is still in Aquarius, but it moves into its gibbous phase by the end of the day. And the gibbous phase is a little bit of a preparation phase for our full moon. It is where we are. We've gone past the square, the first square of the moon to the sun, and we're kind of building to the opposition. And that period of time has been compared to preparation, to analyzing what is working and what isn't, and kind of perfecting things so that we have an effective flowering at the full moon. So this is what we're going to be experiencing pretty much for the rest of our week until that full moon on Sunday. So get your ducks in a row after Monday. If you see what needs to change, you see the conflict, you get kind of a progress report on Sunday and Monday, then as you move through Tuesday through Sunday, you're going to be making those changes that you need to make. The moon is going to be making a trine to the sun very early in the morning, so lots of new ideas may be coming into place with those two planets being in air signs, so our mental faculties are going to be well supported in the very beginning of the day. We may be able to bring more balance and harmony and form to the overall structures of our life, and you know, use our objectivity to create that balance. By the afternoon, we're going to have two important things that are going to be happening. We're going to have the moon making a sextile to Jupiter at about 2:30. So we may feel some positivity around that, you know, any contacts with the moon, with Jupiter, can kind of bolster our spirits a little bit and our sense of optimism, and really kind of want us to expand a little bit. You know, the Aquarius moon is adding air or oxygen to the Jupiterian fire. So that's a harmonious relationship between them, the sextile. But earlier, a little bit earlier than that, Venus is going to be moving into the sign of Scorpio. So we can see here that as we move forward in the day, Venus moves into the sign of Scorpio, into its exile and its adversity right here. Okay. So we can see that, oh, come on. What a pain in the butt. Sorry. There we go. So we can see here that Venus is in Scorpio, which is a Mars-ruled sign. And that is that mutual reception that I was talking about in the beginning of the week, where Venus is in the Mars temple and Mars is in Venus's temple. So they are in aversion to one another, okay, which means that they are in a sign where they do not aspect one another, but they do have a relationship based on being in each other's temples. So again, I was saying that we may benefit from some negative circumstances, or what seem to be on the surface negative circumstances. When Venus is in Scorpio, it's the first decan of Scorpio, we have, we talked about this with Mercury last week, but we have the Five of Cups, where we have the cloaked figure who is mourning 3 spilled cups, but doesn't realize there's two cups behind him that are still filled. And if he would shift his perspective to one of gratitude, he may find the bridge over the river to the castle of fulfillment. So I really think this is about, instead of mourning what you don't have and desiring the things that you don't have, really shifting your perspective to find gratitude for what is working and what you do have in your life. And that's going to lead to more attraction to what you want. Okay. When Venus moves into Scorpio, we can get really, it can be very lusty. We can be very aggressive with our, desire to fulfill our sexual desires and things like that. We may be more, our aesthetic becomes a little darker. This is going to be like where Halloween season really kicks into gear. So we're going to see people decorating their homes with all sorts of scary scorpionic things associated with death and the underworld. Scorpio season was when the veil was the thinnest between life and death. So we may really start to be attracted to scary movies and getting our Halloween costume ready, stuff like that. That's part of the Venus and Scorpio season, I think. Let's see. I would say also just be sure to keep your desires in check when you've got Venus and Scorpio, because it really can lead you into some perilous situations if you let your desires run wild. We also maybe, you don't want to be too martial with your Venusian, processes this week or throughout the month. Okay, as we move into Wednesday, things start to kind of settle down. Okay. On Wednesday, we don't have any huge aspects like we do the day before. We don't have any of these like non-lunar perfecting aspects. What I do for the week is I give you all the non-lunar aspects. We briefly touch on the lunar stuff, and then we really look for any new or full moons and kind of what phase the moon is in. And on Wednesday the 9th, the moon is going to be moving into the sign of Pisces, which is the domicile of Jupiter. You can see that it's going to be, by the middle of the day, we're going to see it ingress or move into the sign of Pisces. And then it's going to make a trine with Venus. Okay, so it's these two water signs are going to be making a trine, which is a nice positive aspect between them. So our ability to, get in touch with our emotions and to, feel our way through things is going to be supported by this lunar trine between, the queen of the nocturnal sect and her sect mate, Venus. Okay, so sect was like a team of planets that had political power in a chart. So those are two sect mates that are getting along. So we may be able to make some of the changes that we want to make, because one of the overall arching philosophical ethoses of the nocturnal sect is diversity and change. So that's going to be supported on Wednesday. That aspect perfects at about 2:47 p.m. And then the only other aspect really of the day is an opposition between the moon and Uranus, where we're going to see that kind of, actually, no, not an opposition, a sextile. Sorry. Got a sextile between the moon and Uranus. So this is actually a day where, some of the things in our life are supported. It's maybe after the really difficult heavy lifting that we may have done Monday and Tuesday, things may flow a little bit easier. Our intuition may be heightened as to what kind of changes we need to make. And we're going to be just kind of preparing for that unveiling at the full moon. Thursday has somewhat of a similar kind of vibe to it. So if we look at Thursday here, we're going to move forward in our chart here. And we can see now that the moon is going to be making a trine to Mercury. So our intellectual processes may be supported. Our intuition is going to be great on Wednesday and Thursday. I think this is a great day to just trust your gut and really feel your way into what needs to happen before the revelations of the full moon. This is a great day for compassion too. I think when we see the sign of Pisces highlighted, we want to, it's about universal kind of compassion. It's about accepting things maybe more the way that they are, dissolving about some of the boundaries that separate us rather than erecting more of them. It all, can lead to also maybe on the flip side of that, maybe we are, allowing other people's emotions really to kind of infiltrate into us and create some confusion too. Because as we go forward in the day, we're going to see a conjunction between the moon and Neptune later in the evening. Before that happens, the moon's going to make a supportive sextile to Saturn in Capricorn. So we may get the reality check and the groundedness that happens later in the day. But then we kind of have a little bit of a dreamy evening where the boundaries start to dissolve. Neptune is a boundary dissolver. It's kind of a transcender. It's a merger. It's also associated with poisons and toxins. So something to keep an eye on. You don't want to get too dreamy under that influence, but it may lead to some deeper sleep, some really like lucid dreams or things like that. Maybe pay attention to what your subconscious is telling you as you go to sleep on Thursday evening. The other cool thing is that the moon is going to be in a Jupiterian sign on the day of Jupiter. So that's a nice little counterbalance, or not really counterbalance, but a supportive aspect where the day and the moon sign match up. As we move into Friday, we're going to have a square between the moon and Neptune. Okay. So on Friday, there we go. We're going to see this. No, not the moon and Neptune. That's not what I meant to say. I meant to say the moon and Jupiter. Jupiter. So again, this may be where we're getting a little bit too, we're trying to expand the vision. Perhaps we're dreaming a little bit too big, or we're kind of trying to figure out how to, put the dream into reality. And we may not be really in touch with the reality of the situation as much as we want to. There we go. We could see that square there between the moon and Jupiter. And, we've been experiencing this every time the moon moves through Pisces. So this isn't anything new. We talk about this a lot. These aspects, that's the beautiful thing about the moon. These aspects repeat, basically once a month. And they may be coming at it from a slightly different perspective as these outer planets start to move into different decans and different bounds. But some of the themes are pretty similar. So we've really been trying to work through, our expansive vision, and really how does it, the reality of it and the illusion of it. I think this is something that we're all been going through, is what kind of goals are realistic and which ones are just kind of pie in the sky fantasies. And this may be another thing where you're asking yourself that question on Friday the 11th. The moon's also going to be making sextile to a newly direct Pluto. I think this is one of the first aspects beyond the conjunction that we've had from the moon to Pluto since it's been direct. So there may be some abilities to kind of, figure out how to use the revelations of transformative energy in a positive direction. All right. Saturday, we have more of our outer stuff going on. Okay. Let's see. On Saturday, in the beginning of the day, in the morning, around noon or so, the moon makes an opposition to Mars. And so we can see here that the moon is at about 5 degrees of Aries and making that opposition with Mars in Libra. And that is a little bit of a difficult, that's probably going to be a little bit of a spicy one, because there is a little bit of reception between them, because it's not a mutual reception, but there is reception because one planet is in the domicile of the other, but there's not like this mutual exchange. The only real issue I see with this, not the only issue, but the main issue is that the moon's host, Mars, is not in a good dignified position. It's in its exile. So that may bring an extra conflict to this Moon-Mars opposition because of the quality of Mars right now. So there may be some conflict that comes up in relationships in particular about your own personal desire and the desires of the other people in your life. You can see that opposition right there. Anytime we have the Aries Libra axis, there's always questions of individuality versus partnership. So that's something to keep an eye on Saturday, the 12th, when the moon moves into Aries. This is the last day of our gibbous phase before we are seeing the full moon. The other thing that's happening as the moon moves into Aries is we're going to see the moon moving what's called under the bond. So here at 3 degrees of Aries, the moon is within 15 degrees of an opposition with the sun. And according to the Hellenistic or traditional authors, that was a weakening of the moon as it came too close to contact with the heat of the sun. So that was, the moon is very cool and moist and it's associated with water. And when it comes into contact with too much of the heat of the sun, it can get dried out. It can not be as effective in lubricating the gears, so to speak. So that was said to be a weakening position for the moon. So as we move into Saturday, lunar significations are going to start to feel a little bit more difficult to manifest. We may be feeling a little bit more self-centered. We may be not as willing to compromise, or it may be harder to manifest things into form because our desires are running headlong into the needs of the partnership. And that could be a little bit frustrating on Saturday as we move towards the full moon. The other thing that's going on that day is the opposition between Venus and Uranus. That's our other big non-lunar aspect of the week. And that's of the nature of Saturn again, according to our sort of theory of aspects that we're kicking around. So this one, yeah. So this is where relationships may be getting a little bit of a shakeup. And of course, it does definitely echo that Moon-Mars opposition as well. But in this case, there may be, a desire to merge with one another, and a need to have some sort of kind of individuality with Taurus. There's this, our independence of resource with Venus in Taurus, with Venus, a Venus ruled sign of Taurus where Uranus is currently hanging out. And there is this relationship now between its host, Uranus's host, which is also in its exile or fall. So this is very interesting echo of the relationship between the moon and Mars having an opposition between its host in a kind of a, exiled position. And then with this other planet here. This may lead to either a relationship breakdown or a relationship breakthrough. Uranus shakes things up. It shatters our preconceived notions about things. It kind of is that lightning bolt of awareness. And it might not always be fun. It's the Promethean gift, though, that is helping us to move forward. There's some erratic qualities. You may have a desire that is a little bit out of the ordinary when Venus is coming in contact with Uranus, that your aesthetic may be a little bit strange. Your colors may be very bold and garish. This is kind of a neon kind of quality. Maybe you just go outside and you're wearing neon yellow all day and you're just blinding everybody with your attire. This is also an aspect where we may crave a little bit more freedom in our relationships, where if we're feeling a little bit too oppressed or fixed in our relationships, we may really have an impulse of like, I've got to break free from this type of thing. So really consider those actions before you take an action on that, because it may just be a manifestation of this planetary contact. Exhibitionism is associated with this. There may be one of the things they were talking about in Ren Butler's book was nudity, like, kind of like flaunting your body and things like that, like sexuality that is shocking. So temptation may be another thing. Maybe there's a relationship that isn't good for us that we're, tempted to get involved in because of that unexpected, Uranian quality to it, where we're just trying to shake things up a little bit. So just be a little bit careful of those types of impulses as we're moving forward. Okay. Last but not least, we have Sunday the 13th, where we are experiencing our full moon. Okay. And if we look at this full moon, a couple things that we're going to be experiencing. First of all, a full moon is an opposition. Sorry, that is not a good line. An opposition between the sun and the moon. And that's going to be happening around 20 degrees. Okay. You don't see it exactly in this chart, but it's happening around 5 o'clock in the evening. And at 20 degrees, the moon will be at 20 degrees, the sun will be at 20 degrees, and then Pluto also will be at 20 degrees of the cardinal signs. So this is our cardinal T-square. Hey, fun. Oh boy, cardinal T-squares. I say oh fun because I have my sun at 15 degrees of Cancer in the other cardinal sign over here, and my Mercury is at 22 degrees Cancer. So I'll give you the update because I'm probably going to feel this one. Yeah, and I can see some situations in my life where there's tension that's maybe coming to a head. But you know what? Here's the thing. There's always going to be times in your life where we may have some circumstances that require a lot of flexibility. And I really think this may be one of these moments where there's many different areas of our life that are competing for attention. With cardinal signs, there is an initiating leadership quality involved with that. They are the beginnings of a season. So there is sort of a desire to take action when we have things in a cardinal sign, rather than adjust to things like mutable signs do, or to maintain the status quo when we have planets in a fixed sign. So this is a very cardinal full moon where we're wanting to take action and move forward with things. But we have a lot of tension between those different areas of our life. And what is the tension that we have? Well, we have the tension between the relationships that we have in our life. We have the tension between our own personal desires of Aries, Libra being the relationships, and we have the tension between the established structures that are at play and that are the undercurrents and the underworld of our life. And that those are things that we're going to really have to try to bring into harmony. Yeah, this seems like a fairly volatile full moon where we are really going to be really being asked to take many different positions into account to really move forward in a healthy way. That moon Saturn square happens very early in the morning. Saturn is kind of a player in this game too, because it's not exact as Pluto is, but it's, Saturn is hosting Pluto, and Saturn is a player in this game, as is Mars, as is, well, Chiron, if you want to look at this chart. Venus is sort of moved out into Scorpio, but Venus is hosting all of those planets in Libra. So she is definitely a player in the game too. Yeah, couple exile planets. One planet that's very strong. Saturn is still really strong. Saturn is actually kind of I would say, the strongest planet by dignity in this. So I think that one of the things that we are going to be required to do is to do some things that aren't necessarily considered fun. So to create the balance between our own desires and the relationships that we want to still function, we're going to have to do some hard Saturnian work, hard work. And yeah, it's good luck. Okay. The other thing that I think is helping, all right, is that, see, there's something else at 20 degrees here too. And that is Jupiter. Yay, Jupiter. Jupiter is creating a sextile to the moon from 20 degrees of Sagittarius. So Jupiter is trying to help. Where Saturn is throwing the gunk in the gears, Jupiter's trying to bring some positivity to the table, trying to bring the ability to be a stabilizing force to confirm everybody in the picture. You know, Saturn likes to exclude things. Jupiter is trying to build bridges and include stuff. So really look at where the Jupiter is placed in your chart. And that area of your life is something where you may be able to find some relief from this cardinal T-square. And remember, Jupiter has just moved into that third decan of Sagittarius. So it also is sort of in that Saturnian decan where it still is requiring hard work, but we may be feeling a little bit more willing to do the work rather than just like pulling ourselves off of the mat or out of bed and be like, oh, this sucks, this is so depressing. That you may see a reason to do it, and you may feel some inspiration behind it and follow that inspiration. Okay, that's our week. That is a big week. That's a big week. Looking ahead, we're going to see it's a little bit of less of a busy week next week. Really, we've got a lot of aspects this week, and really just kind of dealing with the fallout at the disseminating moon phase, where we're really spreading the realizations that we learned at the full moon and kind of incorporating them into our life. So we'll be dealing with the disseminating moon phase. We'll have a square from the sun to Pluto, so there may be some additional underworld upside down things that come up in association with that Libra sun and that Capricorn Pluto. And then we have a series of trines and sextiles with Mercury and Venus to various planets, where various outer planets with Neptune, Pluto, and then Saturn. So there's going to be some ability to move forward with some of the stuff that we've come to terms with. We may see a little bit of a smoother week ahead. So I guess my advice for you at the end of the week here is, if you're having a difficult week this week, just hang in there. Really let the revelations of the full moon wash over you and really give you some feedback as to what your next steps are. And then when we move into the week after that, it'll be a little bit easier to kind of put those things into motion and into action with the trines and sextiles that we're going to be experiencing. So try not to get too crazy with your Uranus oppositions this week. And, hang in there with that cardinal T-square. Yes, if you're in the area, visit me at the Enlightened Soul Expo. It's going to be in Southfield. Check the link below for more information on that, which is going to be on the weekend of the 12th and the 13th. And of course, if you're enjoying these videos and you want to support me making more, there is a Venmo or a PayPal me link in the description below. That's always super appreciated. And yeah, just hang in there. Have a great week, and we'll see you the next time. Take care. Peace.